Doesn't matter, I can cut that part out.
No, keep it.
Oh!
Welcome back to our podcast. It's your host, Big Shug, here with my special guest, Donovan Schwartz. Oh, wait, name drop. Shit.
Full last name, too. It's all good.
Your name's Don. Oh, yeah. Just bleep that out. You can bleep that out, right? You're probably advanced.
You'll leave it all in.
But
anyways,
that's what she said.
Top the more to you, laddies. As I steal more interest. Wait. Top the more to you. Anyways, we're
48 seconds in. I already hate my life.
And it doesn't take that long to think you that you're dead inside anyways. But we're back with our podcast where we're going to talk about science and shit. Yeah, science, bitch!
That's what we should have just called the podcast, is science and shit.
But arrow to a botany, man.
Arrow to Botany, subtitle, science and shit.
I think this is going to be like the 7th or 8th episode, and we still haven't talked about plants.
That's the trope, man. That's the trope.
I wonder if there's just some people that just tune in, to hear the first few seconds, so when are they going to talk about cacti and stuff?
See, that's the thing. It's called Arrow to a Botany because we killed it. We're not talking about it because it's dead to us. We shot an arrow into it. I was thinking about that last night, and I'm like, I don't even really know what the title of the podcast is based off of. Is it Arrow to the Botany, the Skyrim joke?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's I was thinking.
Arrow to the knee, and I'm arrow to the botany. That sounds hilarious.
But then that's the other thing. It's we're not.
Is it working? So sorry about the technical difficulties. But anyways, back to our podcast, Arrow to a Botany.
It only took us 30 minutes to resolve a stupid issue, which shouldn't have been an issue. But anyway, we're talking about the title of Arrow to the Botany.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck that noise.
Let's just jump
Stop saying that. Stop it.
Anyway, so on to the psychology side of things. As I mentioned in the last podcast, I was going to talk about the psychology of power. And I guess without talking about the psychology of power, you have to also talk about obedience and fear as well, because that kind of goes into what I'm talking about when it comes to power. So the idea of power in psychology is that you have the ability to control other people and have them directly work for you. That's what they mean by power in that sense in psychology. Whereas obedience is of course someone tells someone to do something and they'll always do it without question. They always have faith in it. And then there's also fear is just of course avoiding things that you don't you have a negative stimulus of something, then your reaction to that is you'll always avoid that. You look like you're drifting off to space, bro.
No, I'm thinking of examples of fear that would be funny, but I'm drawing a blank.
So, the big thing I guess we can talk about when we talk about the psychology of power is I guess we should talk about fear first, because the idea of fear when it comes to psychology and a lot of examples of how people have described because I guess the biggest example is always going to be brought back is to Hitler, obviously, how he had the power to control Germany basically and have them under his iron fist, and that they would do his bidding without really questioning it. You know what I mean? They were just extremely loyal to him, and there's been a lot of studies out there to show, to try to show his power and show how he was able to control people. So I was wondering, have you heard of something called the Milgram study?
We really did just jump right into it. We're talking about Hitler and shit.
Yeah.
And fear, man. I wasn't ready for this. Yeah, no, I have not at all.
You haven't heard of the Milgram study? Okay, so this is a good thing because for any of those of you who've if there are any listeners out there that are in psychology, as soon as I say Milgram study, you will know exactly what I'm talking about because it's the most famous, probably of all time, study in psychology because of how controversial it is and how its findings is. So the Milgram study, to basically break it down, is an unknowing participant is brought into a room, right? There's those interrogation rooms where it's
one-way mirror.
Yeah, one-way mirror, right?
Yep.
So the person behind the mirror can see the participant. The first example, they can't see each other. There's just a wall between them. So there's there's a participant, there's an actor who's playing the contestant, And then there's a guy in a lab coat who's acting like as like the authority. Usually it's like a professor, or like a teacher in some cases is what they call them. And basically what the participant's supposed to do is ask like spelling questions to the person on the other wall, and if they get it incorrectly, they shock them with like a small amount of volts, and it slowly and more increases. The person who's getting shocked is actually not getting shocked, but he acts like he's getting shocked, right? And the person who's the teacher is like, tells him, oh, you have to administer each shock, right? The only person that is not knowing of like what this experiment going on is the guy asking the questions and administering the shock. And they found that because like a lethal dose of shock is like, it can be around 300 volts, but I know it's usually amps. That's usually enough to like be lethal.
Yeah, amps is usually what kills you.
Yeah, amps usually, but 300 volts is still a very strong voltage.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a pretty strong. It's like enough of a shock to like actually like really hurt you. But like 450 is like definitely enough to easily kill you, right?
So I got zapped with 1,000,000 volts before.
Yeah.
And that had no amps in it. So it's like this is really really weird combination of things, but yeah.
Yeah, but the general idea is like 450 is like enough to like be a lethal dose. Because I think they go around like, when I was doing my research, I kind of laughed. I think of around the number that they usually say for lethal voltage is 420. Which I thought
sure it is. Okay.
Which I thought was a funny number, but like 300 volts is still like quite a painful shock.
The war on drugs returns is all I'll say.
But like 300 volts is still like quite a painful shock, right?
How many amps? 69?
No, like I don't think they ever put the amount of amps into like.
Oh, that's strange, because that's usually what does it.
But this study was also done in like 1964 and 1963.
Okay.
So this is like earlier times.
Right.
So let's just say like the beginning amount of volts is like 10 volts to like 25 volts. That's like enough to like, that's like a little shock.
Yeah.
So like 300's like you're like pulsating, and it's like enough to stop your heart.
Okay. And
450's like redlining, right? So as it's going up, like the guy's getting more and more spelling things wrong, and the guy who's shocking keeps increasing the shock and like telling I'm administering 100 volts, shocks the person. The guy's going, that hurts.
The guy administering the shock is the study subject.
Yeah.
And the guy receiving the shock is an actor.
Yeah. He's like pretending he's shocked.
Okay.
So like the guy keeps going up more and more, and the guy's screaming in pain, like, "Hey, can you stop? Like you're killing me," and whatever, right?
Right.
And every single time, pretty much, like out of all the participants, they all went to 300 volts. Every single person shocked into 300 volts, no matter how much the person screamed and how much the pain the person was in, because the administrator kept saying stuff like...
Was he actually getting shocked?
No.
Oh, okay.
Like, he was pretending like he was.
Oh, I see.
But, like, he was, like, realistic enough where he actually believed the guy was in a lot of pain. Like, if you watch the videos of the study, there's actual videos of the study.
Ooh.
There's a lot of people going, like, he's in a lot of pain. Am I supposed to do this? Like, I don't think so. And the guy's like, you have to carry out the...
Oh, my fucking God.
Like, the teacher's like, you have to carry this out. You have to do this. You have to... Because you have to make sure this test goes all the way through properly. You have to follow procedure, right? And the authority figure kept saying that, so they kept shocking. Only 65 went to like the full lethal of like 450. 65 people, so 2/3 of all participants.
Still a lot.
Yeah.
Still a lot.
So you can see how this is kind of controversial, because like the problem with this study, there's a lot of ethical issues that people have with it, because you're putting people in situations where they're like, because like. There was one, like, when someone looked at the numbers of, like, how many people would have actually killed someone, that's the number. 65% of people would have killed somebody under authority, is what they said.
Whoa.
And this is like this was a big eye-opening one. This test was repeated 18 times, and all the results have shown pretty much, like, the same with, like, some variation.
This experiment was repeated 18 times with different people?
Yeah, like, different people.
Scientists,
different scientists. Okay. Like, of course, they do, like, slight variations. Like, for example, like, the one I got mixed up is, like, they actually saw the person getting shocked.
Yeah.
Same results.
Okay.
So, basically, what this study showed is that, like, what a big thing about psychology and about, like, the idea of obedience is that we all have this innate nature in human beings to follow what authority figures say. So, like, we all have this innate ability, network within ourselves that we want to follow obedience. We want to obey certain figures. We want to follow certain systems. We all want to be part of a certain system.
Yeah, I think it depends, because for me, if I was just told, if I went to that room and this was a scientist guy I didn't know, and if this guy looked like he was actually in a lot of pain, I would have stopped that long ago. And maybe it's because I'm anti-authority or whatever.
Yeah, but that's also what you're saying now. You don't know if you're actually in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I've often, when I still feel comfortable in what I would do in that situation. Like, I'm pretty positive that I would do, unless someone held me at gunpoint, which is different. Like, that's a fear thing. That's fear for my life.
Yeah.
But if it was just some guy telling me to do this and it was a science room, like, me at this time, at this present, because ethics are a lot bigger now. Yeah. Too, like, just from my background, I would not be doing that.
Well, then again, you're more aware of stuff.
Yeah.
This is like,
if I was born back then, I maybe would have done it, right? Because,
or even if you wouldn't have your background right now, you might have still done it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times they just like pick anybody off the street. Like, I would not do this just because I know what the study is now.
Yeah.
But like, I can see why.
I wouldn't do this because I don't do things that I'm uncomfortable with, no matter who tells me to do it. Yeah. So that's just me, though, and I think maybe it probably also depends on the authority figure. Yeah. Like, that's probably a huge part of it.
Yeah, but for the majority, like, this shows like quite a bit of obedience. I do agree with the whole statement about obedience, because like everyone follows like what teachers say to a T. Right. What police officers say to a T. Maybe not so much nowadays since the news.
Yeah, so an authority figure here implies that they have some sort of authority over you. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so people like will obey them, or like respected positions like doctors, therapists,
like highly educated, or in the realm of law. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that's what. So a lot of people took Milgram's study, and what Milgram was trying to do with this study was he was trying to show what Hitler did during the Holocaust. Because like when all of his associates, I can't remember some of their names off the top of my head. I also can't really pronounce them. There was like Ernman, or what's his name? Enrichman or whatever. Anyways, I probably butchered his name. He was known for like the biggest concentration camp that he killed a lot of people. And he went on trial, and when he went on trial, he said that he was just following out orders. That's why he was fearful for his life. That's why he did all this. That's why he sent them to die and all that. And that's what Milgram's study was trying to prove. Is this possible? If somebody's over you and telling you that you have to do this, will you break your morals and kill them, or will you just believe in them? Like, oh, this is okay. This is what I'm supposed to do. However, the biggest problem that a lot of people have with Milgram's study when it comes to the Holocaust, and I do agree with this point, is that when in regards to the Holocaust, Milgram's study does not hold up for one simple reason. Hitler wasn't there. Right. Hitler wasn't at every concentration camp going like, hey, kill these people.
Yeah, but was people that spoke on his behalf there? Like, in the army, you usually have a rank above you.
Yeah, no, that's the people that were on trial. That's that we're saying that they did this out of fear for their thing, or they had to follow out orders, otherwise they wouldn't. Right. But there's also been cases where some people didn't follow out Hitler's exact orders, and like they never got punished for it. So like they're trying to use the case that that they're trying to justify their actions that, oh, Hitler was this bad person, I did it out of fear, which I can kind of see, but when you look at like the whole obedience thing, like if you're trying to use this obedience thing against the Holocaust, I don't think you can, because it shows that authority figure, if the authority figure is there, then you will administrate. When they showed, when they did the exact same test with that authority figure there, the numbers dropped like by half of people like actually like going all the way through.
Because the other thing too that's different between this study and soldiers is that soldiers are, I'm not going to say brainwashed, but they're influenced, and their whole dynamic revolves around them following orders without question. Yeah. That's what a good soldier is someone who's, tough and puts in a bunch of effort and follows orders without question. And that's different from a civilian, because we have, our morals in question, and we have, families and things like that. But I think it's different, right? Because and everyone always says that too. They always say, if I was in the German Luftwaffe and I was in their military, like I wouldn't have followed out these orders. And it's like, well, one, if you have a family and they're threatening to kill your family, probably would have followed out those orders.
Yeah.
Two, if you went through all the indoctrination of military, you would probably be following out these orders. And, like, a lot of people fear for their life, right? And sometimes they're threatened. And this is World War II when, you know, you have this army and they're doing all these things. And, I mean, I don't know what I can't put myself in their shoes. Exactly. Because it was, you know, it's a world war. I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know how they would respond and how obedient they would be.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
I guess that's a hot beat question. So when it comes to those people who are the head of the concentration camps...
Yeah.
Would you let them just have life in prison, or would you have them tried as, like, capital murder?
Yeah, like, me personally, that's a really tough question, because I would obviously say that this isn't just for me to decide. Yeah. Because I always believe that, and that's why... I told you earlier that I don't ever have someone, I might have someone influence what I'll do, but I don't let anyone ever have a deciding factor on what I do. Yeah. Because that's the only time someone I think has the right to tell you what to do is when they have a legal holding over you. If you've broke the law and a police officer needs to detain you for the rest of society's sake, then someone has that right to decide what you're going to do. Yeah. But I think everyone should be able to make their own decisions in life, and I think everyone should strive for that. And I feel that everyone at least has some sort of say in every action they do. Yeah. Of course, this is different because in World War II, like I said, it's wartime, and you're told all these things that you believe are true, and a lot of people in Germany did not like Jews for whatever reason, for the different reasons. And if I applied my own sort of viewpoints on what I do with my life, I would say that these people should not be going away scot-free, because at the end of the day, they're still a captain, and they themselves are authority figures who have to give out orders. And if their orders are to give out orders...
Yeah, and they still ordered, like, many to die.
At the end of the day, technically speaking, you have the entire power as an individual to say yes or no to things. Yeah. They both have consequences. Yeah. And here's the thing. For that situation, the consequence of refusing an order would be, okay, you're court-martialed, maybe you get executed. Yeah. Their consequence of following out the order is if you lose the war, you go to prison for war crimes because you have the decision to make as an officer. Yeah. And I think that, just from my viewpoint on that, yeah, you can say that, oh, they were just following orders, they were trained to follow orders and whatnot, but at the end of the day, you're not a fucking piece of meat. Despite being told you're a soldier that's a piece of meat that follows out orders, yeah, I think every action you choose and every order you follow and command, I think has repercussions. And just because they have the example that, oh, I'm just following out orders, just because they have a rational reason for why they did something, yeah, maybe they shouldn't have done that still. Just because they have, and that's the thing, people always make bad decisions. They have reasons for why they did them, but that doesn't justify them. Exactly. So that's the problem.
Yeah. So when it comes to, like, the whole trials of, like, how they, the leaders got tried on, a lot of people have tried to use, like, the whole thing I was showing you, the Milgram study, to prove that's why they did it. The thing is, I don't believe the Milgram study applies just because the Milgram study is only effective when the authority figure is there. I think this is based off of, like, fear more.
Right, yeah, because fear of, you know, if I don't obey orders, something bad's going to happen. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I totally get that.
So that's what, like, the study, that's like the big problem people have with the Milgram study. Not, of course, like, the ethical issues are kind of harsh because a lot of people, if you didn't know, a lot of people that were in the study that, like, administered the shock had to go into therapy years later because they believe they killed people. Yeah. Yeah, so that's why the study is no longer done anymore.
Yeah, it sounded pretty unethical, but...
Yeah, it's very unethical, but to be fair, though, this study shows quite a bit into, like, the human nature, because, like, it shows that with the right amount of push, what people are really capable of.
Right, that's fair. And, yeah, I think fear is a powerful motivator, for sure. Like, that's always been...
And also, obedience is a powerful motivator.
Yeah, I mean, maybe less so for me personally, but definitely fear and repercussions of actions. Yeah. And you brought up those trials, too, and I don't know how I feel about all those, because, like I said, just from my own perspective, and I know it is just my own, but if I was a soldier right now with my background, my experience, which is totally not related to the times at all, but if I was back there doing all those things, if I killed people... Like, I feel... And that's the one thing. If Germany won... Yeah. they would all be correct.
Yeah.
That no one would be punished for what they did because they all believe that would be true, and that would be the new worldview.
Yeah.
And just imagine that for a second. It's
yeah.
The sort of moral compass of all this is just determined because the Allies won and not the Axis, which is horrifying to think. But the reason they're all being punished is because, you know, for the Allies and for me personally, what they were doing was entirely evil. Yeah. And if they won, they wouldn't think that. But going back to those trials, I think that all these soldiers also had that sort of decision to make, right?
Yeah.
They had a decision when they joined the war.
Well, they should have known what they were getting into. Like,
yeah.
If you're the head of, like, one of those camps, you know what's going on.
And granted, some people were probably behind Hitler because he unified the country.
The thing I just didn't like is that they all claim the same thing. Is just, we are following orders.
Yeah,
that
and
should justify...
You can't point it all on Hitler.
Yeah.
Because if it was all his responsibility and his fault... that would just be one maniac out there. But people had to believe him for this whole country to become unified. People had to invest in Hitler, which meant that he wasn't the sole factor here. There was other people involved. There were other people that believed him. And there were people that was, you know, below him in command. And there's probably a really good reason why all these high-ranking officers got to those positions. Probably because they aligned their beliefs properly with his.
Exactly. And there's also the stories of some that were actually, like, testing on some of them as well.
Yeah, and that's one thing, too, is one of his, like, best officers, too, was doing all of this research on
twins.
Twins, yeah, those twin studies. And that's a huge ethical problem too. I think we talked about that earlier on our podcast.
We can definitely do that because, like, with this, I'm just gonna let you know this is actually just like part one of like a couple part series I want to talk about when it comes to psychology of power, because this is just kind of like opening it up and showing like the obedience and power side.
Right.
What I want to do, like, I'll start a little bit today, and then what I want to do in the next podcast is I want to talk about also like how do these dictators actually work. And how did they get, like... So if you think about it,
well,
like...
it's kind of, like, I've always seen it as it's exploiting the nation.
Yeah.
It's finding something that all the nation hates, and it's exploiting on that factor to get that sort of...
To briefly talk about, like, the Hitler one, I want to talk about this one more in depth in our next podcast, to be honest. But the Hitler one is... the reason he was able to climb so well is just because Germany lost World War I. So imagine this. You lost the war... Then afterwards, your country's destroyed. There's no money. And then all the other countries were like, hey, you owe us X amount of dollars, like millions and millions. You have to pay for all our damage, too.
Right.
You can see why there's a lot of unrest and, like, a lot of Germany, what happened during that time is they blamed the loss of the war on, like, a couple of the generals from, like the old government they had. So when Hitler became into prominence and started leading his side of, like, the regime, a lot of people flocked to it because it's like, oh, this is like the new Germany. This is Germany coming back into prominence and all that. Yeah. And that's how he was able to do it. But there's more, of course, details in there that I want to talk about more specifically when we get to that. Right. But the one thing I do want to bring up briefly is the ideas of community, which is something I'm going to bring up a lot when I talk about dictators and the idea of power. Is how powerful the idea of community is when it comes to psychology. Right. Because as human beings, sadly, we like to talk to each other. I only say that in the sense of evil because when you look at it in the evil sense, the idea of community has bred a lot of hate, and a lot of hate groups like cults, like the KKK, like terrorist groups. Yeah. And there's something about like the camaraderie that a lot of the groups show is what a big problem is. And when you look at like Hitler, and then another big one I'm going to talk about is, of course, Francisco Franco. If you don't know that one, that's a big dictatorship in Spain that lasted 30 years through World War II. And then I also want to talk about Mussolini's as well as... do you know what the guy what was the leader in Japan called?
Which one?
Like the one during World War II.
Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah, those are the big four I want to kind of talk about in this part series. I'm going to spread out...
Yeah, full disclosure, history is not my strong suit. I'll talk about Operation Barbarossa all you want, but...
No, it's just history is actually my strong suit, but like I'm not going to talk about history. Like, I'll bring in history, obviously, to explain like circumstance, but I'm also going to bring like the psychology into it, like... Because psychology has actually been able to describe, in a way, why dictatorships have been so successful. Right. And I want to talk about these ones just because I was so fascinated. I've actually done a lot of research on it and written papers on it. So I just wanted to talk about what do you think about the whole sense of community and how, like, the sense of people always wanting to belong and its success with dictatorships.
Well, it also depends on sort of the culture, because one thing we know about cultures is that some of them are really individualistic. Some of them really focus on the individual.
Yeah.
And some of them focus on, like, communities. They focus on, and this, like, for example, like, Western societies are very individualistic.
Yeah.
But then you have other countries in the world, and even like subsects within that. Like, we talk about indigenous communities, they're usually less individualistic and more about the whole.
I think
the function.
I think with that, what you're saying there, I think that's more modern though, because when you look at these times in the 1940s,
yeah,
they're more actually community based.
And that's true too. It's also depends on the time, and right now in Western society, we're experiencing like the highest rates of individualism, and that's happening in Europe as well. But
back then it was more community based, even though there is some they're more individualistic at the time still.
Yeah.
But I feel like they're more community based, especially in Europe.
Well, and everyone, that's the whole thing. It's that's the way we're pushing things. We have networks like Instagram now where everyone's trying to create an identity for themselves.
Yeah.
As opposed to the identity of the community. You're seeing a lot less like focusing on other people and more so just focusing on building your own life and your own story. And we're talking about excluding people in your life that are negative and getting rid of more people and push away more people.
Exactly.
And we're trying to build this narrative about our own story as opposed to the story of the people around us with ourselves.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's interesting stuff.
I still think that the idea of community is a very powerful one, even in today's, because that's pretty much the reason why ISIS and the KKK are getting power, is because they're like, you can be a part of this group, you can be a part of this movement, you can be a part of this thing.
Yeah, and very rarely are there actually hermits, people that function entirely good on their own.
Yeah.
And we need people. Like, as humans, we're very social, and you keep hearing that trope, but it's true, and we need friendships, and we need people in our life to sort of justify and help who we are and help us discover ourselves, and to get entertainment and value out of life, we have to have others in our lives a lot of the time. That might not be true for a lot of people, but for some people it is. And especially, that's sort of what we're talking about with rallying people together, is that like a community is pretty much as a group of people living together with the same set of ideals and values and things like that. So just want to bring it back to this, like when Hitler found this whole nation that was struggling with economy and with their struggles and all these hardships, he tried to pin it on someone so that everyone could rally together with this common set of ideals.
Yeah.
And he exploited that community, if you will, the whole country, to try to bring that together and bring it back together and to unify that. And so community is so important because it gives people meaning back to their lives, and it helps people to bond over hardships and bond over ideals and values and show those things. Like we talk about the anti-vax community.
Yeah.
Shout out to that whole topic again. we talk about communities like that. But before, I forgot to mention our sponsor of this episode. We were talking earlier about the milligram. How do you say that? The trials? The study, sorry?
Oh, the milligram.
Talk about the study with electricity. Our sponsor today is nipple clamps, electrifying your love life, your life in general, and your friendships since 1864.
Jesus. And with that, we'll end the psychology side of things. Next time, I'll definitely bring up more into the. I'll definitely bring up more. I think we'll continue our talk about Hitler, continue on to the next one, and then maybe transfer on to Mussolini. And then we'll just kind of look at like the makeup of the person, because I think that'd be very interesting. We're
gonna get filtered out as a hate group for talking about Hitler, for bringing up the mention of Hitler. YouTube's just gonna be like, nope.
I'm not monetized anyways.
Wait, when we hit the big leagues in the next 5 days, we're gonna get demonetized right away after we make our first toonie.
There's a bunch of, if there's any non-Canadian listeners who are like, what the fuck's a toonie?
Yeah, we're just going to leave it as toonie.
Anyways, what's the biology side today, or what science do you bring today?
Well, that's a great question, Donovan. Shit, Donnie, shit, damn it. Yeah, so last night I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about, and I think we could either spin things down from one topic. Like, I was going to ask you, what is considered natural nowadays?
Oh, don't give me... Oh, no. Now we got a topic right here.
The other one, which I think we've touched on briefly, was artificial intelligence. And so you can kind of pick.
We can do that another day. Fuck it. Let's talk about natural.
Okay, sure.
Number one thing that pisses me off and will always piss me off.
This is already great.
as someone who lives in Canada, I hate when I buy vegetables and fruit and it says it's from fucking California. And the reason I'm bringing this up because we're talking about natural, right?
Right.
How the hell is something considered natural in all senses of the word? Like if I mail a tomato from my garden to California, it's gonna be dead upon arrival. But when they send it to us, it's completely fine. Now I get there's all pesticides and all that stuff to make it last longer. I get that we need that.
Yeah.
But a big problem I find in Canada, and a lot of people I talk to, like a lot of local people I talk to, because I work at a grocery store, they agree with me with this big complaint. Is that we have a lot of like farms that are locally nearby.
Yeah.
But why don't we get their fruit and vegetables? But no, we get it all from fucking California. Oh,
so you're talking about natural in a different sense than I was even thinking of. But this is cool.
Because like I also want to talk about that when it comes to like farm animals. Because like I get that we all need beef and all that, right? But it's been proven, like, because I look at a lot of bodybuilding stuff. It's been proven that if you eat, like, grass-fed natural beef, it's a lot better for you. If you eat, like, these beef from, I'm not going to lie. Like, I tend to have to eat that stuff just because I can't afford it a lot of times. But I try to, if I can, eat grass-fed meat because grass-fed meat or, like, natural cows is actually better for your digestion. It makes you feel better, and it gives you more nutrients. Now, if you get, like, these steroid cows, is what I call them, because you've seen the pictures of them, right?
Yeah.
They look like fucking tanks.
Yeah.
Like, I get why they do it, because we need, like, they just want to get the most amount of meat out there, because, like, the meat market is huge, but, yeah. Well, I guess I gave you a good starting point.
The good thing for Canada is, I think our regulations are a lot stricter than the United States for that sort of stuff, so we're not allowed to use, and I haven't researched this at all, but this is what I'm going to say I'm pretty certain with this.
Yeah.
But feel free to research this. But I'm pretty sure in Canada that we're not allowed to use hormones and antibiotics for that sort of purpose of...
Well, that stuff fucks up your hormones.
Well, yeah, who knows? Like, we don't really have a lot of good long-term side effects. We know that antibiotic use in agriculture is horrible because that's causing a shitload of antibiotic resistance.
Yeah.
Which is causing a lot more people to die from... treatable illnesses.
Exactly.
So that's one reason I don't like it. But we're using them too as I'll just briefly touch on this, but we're using antibiotics, at least in the States, to prevent bacterial infections as opposed to treat them, which is what's causing antibiotic resistance a lot. Those antibiotics get out in the environment, bacteria become resistant to them, we have this big shit show. But in Canada, we have good regulations so that a lot of our beef here is, in general, better than the ones we see in the States.
If I may interrupt, what is your thoughts on the whole grain-fed, corn-fed, grass-fed
I haven't looked into it, but for me, my viewpoint's more from a hippie perspective as opposed to an evidence-based perspective.
Yeah.
Because, I'll just say that. I haven't looked at the evidence, but I apply, and I know this is bad, but I apply my experiences as a human to some animals. So when I see chickens shoved together in factories...
That's the other thing I was going to talk about.
Yeah, free range and go hand in hand with me for like grass-fed and natural cattle. And it also depends... It's kind of weird though because there's problems associated with this as well. But in general, I like to support the habits and hobbies that result in healthy animals.
Yeah.
Despite what it may do for me. But so... When you talk about grass-fed beef, free-range chickens, things that from our ethical studies have shown that this likely results in an increased quality of life for the animal.
Yeah.
Because...
Well, it also is an increased life for us because when you ingest animals that are more natural, you're actually getting like better quality meat that's actually better for you, better nutrients. Because if you eat... Let's just say you have free-range chicken eggs, right?
Yeah.
If you get that, you get actually more omega-3s is what you need. Like, I'm not trying to... This started turning into, like, a health show, but, like...
Well, biology is kind of... Like I told you last week, health science is the top science.
Exactly. But when it comes to, like, that stuff, it's like... the one thing I kind of have, I didn't know about this for a while, but the thing I found out is apparently a lot of like chickens, like eggs that you get from, or like chicken you eat, or like eggs you get, is from corn-fed chicken, which apparently is really bad for them. I did not know that. Apparently grain-fed's a lot better.
Well, grain, corn. I think when it comes to okay, never mind. When it comes to animal husbandry, I feel that a variety of meals is always especially important.
Yeah.
And that's what we tell people, that eat a variety of foods, you get sort of the whole thing of nutrients that you need.
Exactly.
And we should be avoiding feeding the exact same thing over and over and over again. Like with my chickens, what we do is we feed either food scraps that we don't eat, which they love, and we feed that to give them a bit of a variety, or I'll feel a bit guilty and want to spoil them, and I want to give them like a plate of food that I have prepared for them, like a variety of vegetables and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to sort of the proper way to care for animals, it's to look into the research, see what's best for them. And I think the problem is we're not focusing on ethics and husbandry. We're focusing on cost effectiveness because we're trying to feed. We're trying to feed so many fucking people,
and they want profits too.
And profits are important for them. And granted, though, it's very hard to be a farmer nowadays.
Exactly.
If you're not already a well-established and big farm thing.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, I think we should strive to have farmers and help them out to get this financially and with whatever resources we can.
Yeah.
So that we treat animals as good as we treat people. Yeah. And that's what I said. I have sort of a more hippie perspective on it.
Especially nowadays that more people are more health conscious with a lot of it. Because if you eat like a lot of like going back to the beef thing, if you eat like a lot of like the beef in the grocery stores,
right,
you'll get sick. Just because like a lot of it is like not like, because a lot of people are eating like high quantities, like they're eating like ground beef every day, and a lot of it's if you're not eating like grass fed, it's actually really bad on your digestion, because like it just feels like a lump in your stomach. Some people who might have great digestion might have that, but most people I talk to have like a problem with that. But I want to circle this back to when I was talking about the whole tomato thing. How do you feel about, I don't know how to phrase this properly, but like I hate when people are like, when I go to this grocery store and it says like, there's like a big ass tomato right there. It's like this. It's like as big as my fist.
Right.
And it says natural.
Okay, so for you, like I'm trying to get your perspective here, and I think I got it. So for you, when I'm talking about natural with you think of,
the first thing I think of is that juicy tomato that has a bunch of shit pumped into it. That's the first thing I think of.
And you're sort of more back towards the days of when I would just go out into the woods and grab some berries natural,
or like farmers actually if I'm gonna buy like fresh vegetables, I honestly prefer going to like a farmer's market, just because like
you like that sort of local stuff.
Well, because it tastes better, it is better.
Right.
It's not like, because like the thing is, whenever I see fruit come from like obviously I'm not gonna be able to grow a banana in my backyard. Like I get that, but like for like fruit that's like grown locally, like apples, peaches, apricots, that's local to us, by the way. I know it might not be local to you guys. I'd rather, like, if I see it's from like a different, like usually it says California, because we usually get all our fruit from California. If you didn't know that, I'm just a little hesitant to actually buy it, just because like it's probably pumped full of stuff. Because like you can't just mail a tomato from here to California.
Do they use refrigerated storage?
Yeah, they do, but if you use like if like a normal farmer sends it, it'll only last like a few days in like refrigeration, like only a couple of days.
Yep.
But like these ones are actually pumped with stuff to like keep them alive.
Yeah, some GMOs have some sort of preservative nature to them.
Yeah, I'm not trying to sound like, I don't want this to go back to like the I don't trust scientists things.
That's
like,
all good. But
I'm not saying I don't trust farmers, because some of them do just send them and it's fine. But like,
there's also other things that we do as well that aren't really, they're not like you kind of talk about. It's more on the side of pumping chemicals into them. But one thing I can think of too is apples usually apple layers and skins naturally have a layer of wax on the outside of them to prevent the water from evaporating from them.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's all, but I've also heard that they add extra wax layer, just like, that shitty paraffin wax. They add an extra wax layer to the outside to let it last longer. And I think it just all comes down to knowing the food that you're putting into your body, and you keep hearing that nowadays.
Yeah.
Sort of knowing, and you can't just say though. I will also mention this because knowing what goes into your bodies isn't saying read the label, and if it has something that sounds like a chemical on it, refuse it immediately. It means reading what's on the label and reading what this thing is and understanding what's going into your body and then making a rational decision. So you can't just look at because people are adverse to chemicals, but chemicals are a wonderful thing. Chemicals have given us medicine. They have given us treatments for these things. They have given us ways to extend the life of our crops. They've been given us ways to increase our yield. They helped with economy. Like, chemicals are a good thing if they're used properly, and people need to understand that. So looking at your ingredients list, look at this chemical. Is this bad? You can do research on it, and good research on it. And knowing what goes into your body is the important thing. Yeah.
This is me interjecting so I don't cut you off. There's actually one thing I've always actually wanted to ask you. Now I finally got the chance. Now we're in conversation about it. Yeah, What's your opinion?
I swing.
What's your opinion on organic versus inorganic?
Oof.
Because there's one thing I want to throw at you that I've heard. And I don't know if it's true. I heard it's pissed people off before too. But I heard this. I think it was like one of my high school teachers said this. Is like, oh, don't buy organic bananas because it can't be organic because of the skin on it, like the chemicals they put to make it organic or whatever. Like if it's the skin fruit, it can't be organic, is what he pretty much told me.
Have you heard the rumor out there? I don't know. I haven't looked into this at all because this podcast for me is just talking about what I've learned. Yeah. And not what I've researched. But have you heard that all bananas are genetically modified?
No, I haven't heard that.
So I've heard that all bananas are genetically modified because if they weren't, they would all be dead right now and we would not have bananas.
Really? I don't know if that's true or that.
Well, everyone can look it up, but
I'm gonna look
this
segues
into what I want to talk about as well. But I want to ask you first too: is what do you think the difference is between organic and inorganic, or non-organic?
I don't really know too much because I haven't really researched enough. Because I always thought organic hippies, but now I definitely try to lean towards more especially with eggs. Yeah, I try to go for more organic eggs just for those omega-3s because I need those. Yeah, but organic when it comes to meat, I have no idea. Okay. But when it comes to fruit, I think it's... Don't laugh at me.
I'm not going to laugh at you.
I think that organic is inorganic stuff is you pray with pesticides and all that. And organic, you don't use any of that. That's the only thing I know.
Okay, so...
and I think that it's grown naturally for organic, in a natural setting, where inorganic, it's it can be I don't want to say factory made, but those factory farms type things. Okay. Where they try to do max production of stuff. Sure. That's what I think more inorganic is.
Okay, so I'm gonna run a lot by you. Okay. So when I learned these terms, maybe the terms have changed. The difference between organic and inorganic is simply the methods used to grow them.
Okay, so it's kind of on the right track.
However, people get confused by that, and they're actually not aware of the differences. Okay. The differences are organically grown foods cannot use methods of genetic modification that are artificial. Okay. Selective breeding is a way to manipulate genetics. Artificial breeding or artificial selection or selective breeding has been used for hundreds of years. That's how we've created dog breeds. Yeah. So technically speaking, dogs are organically genetically modified organisms. Yeah. We've been using selective breeding on plants for a very long time. That's how we got corn from maize. We've been changing genetics by modifying different parts of plants by selecting for different parts, and that's an organic way of modifying plants. So there's a really cool. I think it's a species of mustard, and 7 or 8 or something like that of our vegetables has come from this one plant. Jesus. Like our cabbages are. It's crazy. You can look it up, but it's really cool plant. If I look it up.
We're talking about plants on a botany.
Oh fuck! Hey, we need a little whistle or some shit. Put a little bell or a little celebratory do that. So anyway. Back on this, okay. Organic also means that you can still use pesticides, but you use organic pesticides.
Okay.
Which can be worse for you than inorganic pesticides.
Hold up. What's an organic pesticide?
It just means a pesticide that's derived from a natural compound.
Okay.
So it's not something we've made in a lab. It's not something we mixed together in a lab. It's something that we found in the environment and are now using it on mass production to treat things.
So if I piss on my plants, is that an organic pesticide?
If it kills the bugs, then yeah, for sure.
Sweet.
So that's the
thing. So if you piss on a bug that's on your plant, that's an organic pesticide.
there you go. Sure.
Hey.
Urea is an organic viral side.
Oh.
So if you piss, it's actually an antiviral compound.
Oh, nice.
The more you know. Put up the little.
The more you know.
Edit that in. So that's the funny thing about organic and inorganic is at the end of the day, this is a way for people to get you to buy more stuff, and that's what I've always seen it as. Yes, there are some benefits, but yes, you're also being manipulated because just because something's organic also doesn't mean it's good for you. You know what else is organic?
What?
Anthrax. So there's all these different sort of cyanide's organic.
So don't buy
formaldehyde's organic.
So don't buy organic eggs is what you're saying.
No, I'm not saying that. I like free-range eggs. But again, like I just said to everyone, it's about knowing what is in your food. What are you putting into your body? Is it covered in pesticides? Is it not covered in pesticides? So organic...
What's your thought on pesticides, by the way? Because there's a lot of debate about pesticides. Should we use it? Should we not use it?
I'll say the same thing for pesticides and GMOs, which I have... I worked in this...
So what's a GMO again?
Genetically modified organism.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I worked in this lab where a lot of people actually... I was surprised, but a lot of people, were against GMOs, and that's the trend nowadays too. It's the same thing with organic. It's a flashy word, and people want to eat healthier, and because the sort of push for organic was so good that everyone fell for a lot of these things, not knowing entirely that there was some dishonesty in some of these topics. Organic can be good for you, right? Like, just like, in my opinion, inorganic can be good for you. With the story about the bananas, if we didn't have GMOs, the bananas would be gone. And
that'd be sad.
Yeah, of course. That's my favorite flavor. Besides blue flavor.
I thought you were gonna say for a second besides dick.
Besides BBC. Not the radio station, the Black Hawk, you know what I'm saying? And we're done.
I want that
Welcome back.
I want that on a t-shirt. Not the radio station, the big Black Hawk.
That's our next t-shirt.
What
was I talking about? Bananas. So with GMOs, I mean, every day it seems like my perspective changes. I'm not entirely for one or against the other, but I feel that it's like I just feel like if you don't use it like excessively. It depends, right? Because there's okay, here's what I'll do. I'll look at one side, then I'll look at the other.
Okay.
And I won't make an opinion because I don't really have one.
Okay.
I'm fine myself with this. Actually, I will make an opinion. I'm fine myself with using GMOs. That's my personal choice. Everyone as a consumer is allowed to make their own choices.
Exactly.
On the side against GMOs, you have organizations like Monsanto, which have a monopoly over genetically modified organisms and a lot of kind of sketchy shit they do. And people are worried about some of these genetically modified organisms interbreeding with non-GMO organisms, and there are concerns for that because you do see that. So some people want to grow their plants organically. They don't want to have that genetically modified DNA because they're worried that that's going to cause a problem in the future, or it might be unhealthy for them. And so they want to have they want to have their plants to be organic. So they don't want this interbreeding of genetically modified organisms. Also, people worry about, if you reverse or if you engineer the DNA inside of these plant cells, that they're going to get into your body and change your DNA. I'm not a big fan of that theory, just because if you understand molecular genetics, that doesn't happen. And plus our DNA is changing all the time. You and I are constantly going through thousands of mutations in our days. Yeah. And again, we've been changing DNA for a while. Granted, there are different methods. Like, instead of using selective breeding, we're using sort of all these different things like CRISPR. But we're still modifying DNA. I haven't looked into it enough. I'm not an expert, so I will say that. However, I will also say that all science is becoming scary for people because they don't understand it.
Exactly.
And there are countries in the world, we've talked about this, we talked about a lot of countries in Asia they have these deficiencies in certain vitamins, and people are coming up with ways to put these vitamins into rice, which is a staple food for a lot of these countries.
Yeah.
And they could be curing their vitamin deficiencies with this rice. But because people are afraid of it, that's not happening. And granted, yeah, maybe the results aren't conclusive, or maybe they are, and maybe that we're just being scared or paranoid.
Yeah.
Another case, let's say, for example, this is true because I still haven't looked into it. We lose, our bananas because they can no longer resist climate change and drought.
Yeah.
Here's another case, climate change and drought. What if this kills off all of our vegetables and the only way to save it is GMO organisms? Because this is a very real thing that could be happening. Mm-hmm. People are worried about this, and we're now trying to create genetically modified organisms that can resist drought. Another example of a GMO that's being used. People are afraid of pesticides, so they use this Bt toxin, which is it kills insects that eat the plant. That increases crop yields, which allows us to feed more people. Yeah. Another GMO idea. You can create a GMO that grows faster and more abundant, and it can reproduce more often so that you have increased crop yields, feeding more people, resulting in less starvation worldwide.
Yeah.
So, how long are we going to keep being afraid of GMOs? How much evidence is necessary for us to say it's safe? Mm-hmm. And what are the consequences and pros of using GMOs and not using GMOs? Because right now, with a lot of the evidence, it says that GMOs can feed a lot more people and can help with the problem of world hunger. Mm. And it can also help to have drought-resistant species for when our climate starts to change in some of these areas and they become more arid and more sort of desert-like and more droughts occur.
Yeah.
So that's the question is, with any sort of new technological advancement, is how much evidence do we have to say it's safe? And is people's paranoia really worth all the benefits that might be going away from GMOs?
Yeah.
Because there's some examples out there that it takes for some of these plants they've been theorizing they could have 3 times as much crop yield.
Yeah.
And also artificial versus natural. You talked about growing inside of greenhouses and things like that.
Yeah.
But greenhouses allow for us to increase yields by having more crops year-round. And now we have vertical farming, which lets us use less horizontal land area and expand upwards, which increase crop yields per area.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. And I'm a big fan of vertical farming. I think we should be doing that like crazy. But yeah. That's my tangent.
I guess all we can say is you just really just need more education on the whole GMO situation, eh? Well, it needs to be brought more to the public, because I've never heard of any of these problems.
Yeah, and people always think that, I don't know, see, that's the thing, is when I have a conversation with someone about GMOs, they just tell me that, this is pretty much the majority of the response I get is, I don't like GMOs because they're genetically changing DNA and that's not natural.
Well, didn't we have this talk before? Genetic material changes all the time.
Yeah, it changes all the time. And so I'm like, yes, is that why you're afraid? Because I will say, you probably should have reasons to be afraid. There probably are reasons to be afraid of GMOs. But whenever I talk with people about genetically modified organisms, it doesn't seem like their arguments are logical or rational at all. They just say, I'm afraid of it because DNA changes. And I'm coming from this perspective, and I'm like, yes, it changes. Everything, DNA always changes. Of course it does.
Yeah.
But if you're going to make an argument, it doesn't seem like a good argument to me. And yeah, I'm not trying to say that these people are wrong. I'm just trying to say that their arguments aren't good. There might, of course, like anything, there's probably consequences to these things, but you're not talking about them. We're not having a good discussion because you're just saying your opinion that it holds no meaning for me, because this is worse for... I could get behind the anti-vax community, but what the fuck are you saying with GMOs? You're just saying they're bad because they change DNA. I don't get it. It's just like... If we're gonna talk about this, we have to understand both sides, and I don't think these people understand both sides.
Yeah.
No one has ever brought up, oh, GMOs can increase crop yields, or oh, GMOs can help feed, people deficient in certain vitamins and nutrients, and they can help save our crops against things like climate change. No one has ever talked to me about that on that side.
All they say is change is bad.
Yeah, they just say, oh, DNA is changing. I'm like, yes, it is, but like...
It's like looking at like a minor detail of like a whole book.
People clearly don't understand the issue because it seems like they don't understand both sides. Or it's just a perspective of, again, it's the whole organic thing, is we're pandering to people's fears of this is not organic, therefore it must be bad.
Yeah.
So buy our organic foods that cost like 35% more.
Yeah.
So a bit exploitative in nature. I don't know. That's my rant.
Yeah, that's a good way to end this, actually. Just a nice.
I don't know. I think I just blacked out for the past 20 minutes. So I don't think natural is bad. I don't think unnatural is bad. I think they both have their sort of benefits. I think what we should be doing is not focusing on natural versus unnatural, is focusing on what's good for everyone.
Exactly.
I'm your host, Big Shug. We'll see you next week when we not next week. We'll see you 2 weeks from now-ish.
Yeah, because we're having a road trip next week, so you won't see us next week.
When we talk about artificial intelligence and more about our boy Adolf Hitler, who is, thank God, dead now.
Yeah, and remember to always be meat machines.
Yeah, and also sponsor us electric nipple plugs and butt plugs nipple clamps and butt plugs and all sex toys. Someone sponsor us, please. We're gonna get rich soon. We're gonna be